My name is Murray Price. I'm the Managing Director for Eqstra Fleet Management. I've been the Managing Director for the last 10 years, but with the group for the last 20. The purpose behind the video is really to give some sort of insight as to where, from our perspective within Eqstra Fleet Management, we see the industry going, what the big trends will be. Well, I think first of all, fuel has become a bigger and bigger component of your fleet cost. At the moment, we'd estimated it being around 46 to 48%, depending on the type of vehicle, of your operating cost of the vehicle. So without any doubt, it's going to continue to be a big driver. Most of our customers are taking a view that by changing driver behavior, you can deliver significant savings with regards to your fuel. And it's really going to be dependent on what happens with the rand and with oil. Oil, as we know, is slightly over $50 a barrel, so there's been some recovery. But we've also had the rand strengthen, so I think the two may offset each other, but we don't see it changing significantly, so it may drop slightly from 46% to say 45% in terms of its total cost for running a vehicle. I think we're always going to have pressure in terms of the import component on vehicles. Obviously, most of the South African vehicles that we would be putting on fleet are locally manufactured, so they would have a big portion of the vehicle would have local content. But anything that is being imported obviously would be exposed to changes in the rand dollar. The dollar is relatively strong, but the rand has actually sort of held its own in the last sort of 3 to 6 months. Difficult to say what that looks like into the future. And I think if you look at Trump, if you look at Brexit, both of them are big uncertainties globally, and very difficult to say what that impact will be long term. I certainly think big data is going to have an enormous impact on the fleet industry as a whole. The data is only really of great value when it's in context to other data. By bringing it into one embedded platform, it really allows us to be able to analyze that data far more effectively and start to look for trends and insights that maybe we would have missed. So it's interesting to see that somebody's speeding on the tracking device, but what does that mean in terms of their fuel consumption? How is that talking to the amount of fines they get? Is it impacting the operating CPK on maintenance for the vehicle? What impact does that have down the road on residual? Bringing that data into context is really where we see a key differentiator for Eqstra Fleet Management, and why we went through the significant pain of building one platform that does all elements of fleet. Many people said we were crazy to do it. Certainly there's been times where I've agreed with them, but I think we're at the point now, having all that data where we've got one vehicle record with all of the operating data around it, really gives us a huge advantage in terms of being able to tell customers, this is the trends we're seeing. If you change this type of behavior, you're likely to get this cost benefit. And certainly I think big data is going to be a big driver around that. That talks to our data internally, but I also think there's a huge requirement for us to bring in external data and integrate that. So trends that are happening in the market, what's happening with residual values, how does that all tie together with the data that we hold internally? So we built our system with the idea that bringing in data and looking at data in context to other data will be a sort of key focus area for the business. The impact of self-driving cars is going to be an absolute game changer for the industry as a whole. And I think it's more than just the self-driving technology. There's sort of 4 key technologies that are coming together that we believe will significantly impact the market. The first is around battery technology and the improvements we've seen with Tesla. The second is around the fact that we would have autonomous vehicles. The third is that those vehicles are potentially going to be electric vehicles and obviously charged off solar. And if you take all of those technologies, the cost of solar coming down, battery technology improving, electric vehicles and autonomous, the impact's likely to be as big as us moving from riding horses to driving cars, because we believe it's going to mean people move away from owning a vehicle to requiring a service. And if you listen to all the studies, a really heavily used vehicle in our fleet, when we look at telematics, for example, a sales representative is maybe using their vehicle between 16 to 18% of the day, given that it's parked mainly at customers. If you were to just extrapolate that and take a view, for example, on a city like Los Angeles where over 45% of the surface area is allocated either to parking or to roads, you would most probably only need a fifth of the vehicles that we currently see on the road, because they would literally drop you at the meeting and move on to pick up the next lift that's in that area and move them. Uber, as I'm sure you know, are already running a self-driving scheme. It has been running for a while in Detroit. I think they're now up to 50 vehicles and not a single incident's been had so far. So it's going to have a massive impact, and I think the biggest impact is going to be on employment globally, because it is the second largest employment vertical around the world after farming, is driving of vehicles. So we would see it impact our operation from end to end. You would have a risk of insurance not being relevant because there's no more accidents. You'd have a risk of there being no more maintenance because the vehicles are now electric vehicles. So if you take it across our industry, it really means we'd have to move away from our current sort of operation more into how do we manage that solution and the actual logistics behind it for customers who are looking for a driven service, not to own a vehicle. I think the impact of IFRS 16 is going to be significant on the fleet industry, and one which we are ideally positioned for. Eqstra had the benefit of going through a bit of a financial crisis after unbundling from Imperial in 2008, and that really made us look at our model. We were then very much a leasing business that did a bit of fleet management. We're now much more a fleet management business that does a little bit of leasing. And many of our customers go for the lease option, yes, to transfer risk, yes, to have a fixed price, but many of them also because the solution is off balance sheet, and that obviously will change in 2019. We believe that the industry will see a change where those customers who are looking for an off balance sheet solution may make the call to say, we're actually going to go back to acquiring the vehicles cash and having them on our balance sheet, not having to pay an external funder for the cost of obviously financing the vehicle. There we see ourselves having a huge opportunity to provide those customers with the full managed service without actually owning the asset.